a major report came out today stating that the Chicago Blackhawks and Seth Jones are working on a trade to send him out of Chicago. In this video, we're going to talk about how big of an impact Seth Jones could have on one of these contending teams, and is it even possible, due to his cap, for a trade to happen? We're going to break it all down for you guys coming up on this episode of Hattrick HQ. But before we get into it, we got to say that 91% of you guys watching these videos aren't subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up on the latest NHL news, rumors, trades, everything happening around the league, make sure you go down below and hit that subscribe button. But with that said, like I said, there was some big news coming out of Chicago today where Seth Jones requested a trade out of Chicago. If you just take a look at the direct quote from Seth Jones here, he said, "I would like to give myself a chance to win in my career. I know that the money is not an easy thing to move, and that's what we're figuring out." So in initial thoughts to this quote, we're seeing that him and Kyle Davidson, the GM of the Chicago Blackhawks, are working together on a deal that will send him out of here. Because obviously, $9.5 million, yes, that's right, is what his current cap hit is. And that's not just, for this season. It's for 5 more seasons. He signed a huge deal. I believe it was with Pat Brisson at the time in Chicago, where they locked him up for 8 years to lose 35 years old. Is he worth $9.5 million? Probably not. I don't think that. I think that's a big number for Seth Jones. I think he's a tremendous two-way defenseman in this league, but that's a lot of money here. And if we just take a look at Seth Jones, if you're wondering how he's doing this season, he has 26 points in 38 games on this struggling Chicago Blackhawks team. I mean, when you got Bedard up there, it's easy to work the puck into him and get some points up on the board for you. But Seth Jones has been a guy on this right-hand position on the defensive end that has been maybe one of the best, well, not one of the best, but like one of the top 10 two-way defensemen over this past decade. Very consistent. I believe he has like 4 or 5 All-Star game appearances at this point as well. And if we take a look, it's not just the offensive side. You can pause the video here, check out all of his stats for over his career. But one thing I did want to point out here is I believe he has like 76 hits and 65 blocks or something as well this season. This is a guy who isn't afraid to lay the body, be a bit physical or at times, and also isn't afraid to put his body on the line for his team, block these shots coming towards the net. And obviously, with Seth Jones, you're getting a leader here. Seth Jones has been a assistant captain for the Chicago Blackhawks this season, and he's 30 years old. He is a guy who has a lot of league experience, but like he says, he doesn't really have that winning experience, and he's now, where he's 30 years old, he's kind of thinking, hey, it's more than just the money for me here now. I'd rather go out and end my career with a Stanley Cup under my belt. And there's going to be a lot of teams involved in talks of Seth Jones. There hasn't been any initially linked to him as of now. This news just dropped today, but I went ahead and made an educated guess on some teams that maybe we won't hear of. Obviously, we're going to hear of New York linked to him. We're going to hear of Winnipeg, Vancouver, all these big teams that have been linked to all these trades, like the Granlund trade, the JT Miller trade, the stuff that's happened already, are most likely going to be linked to Seth Jones, because this is a right-handed shot defenseman that is a very big thing, a very hard thing to come by in this league. So when one goes up on the market, whether it's for trade or on the free agency market, teams are going to be after him. Seth Jones is going to be probably the most sought after trade piece heading into the deadline now, with a lot of these big trades happening before the Four Nations break. But like I said, I went ahead and kind of checked in to some teams that I thought would be best fit for Seth Jones. And if we just take a look here, my first team here is the Dallas Stars. And yes, we just seen a trade with them happen, bringing in Mikael Granlund to shore up their playoff run. And I like that trade for them a lot. And I think with the cap space they have right now, it says the projected cap space is around 4.5, any team that trades for Seth Jones here is going to need him retained at 50%, which is going to drive the value up on the trade. They're going to have to give up a lot more for him than they would if his contract was lower, because Chicago's going to have to retain this half of his contract, which is $4.75 million over the next 5 years. So if you're asking a team to retain $4.75 million over the next 5 years, you're going to have to give up something here, whether it's a big prospect, whether it's a first-round draft pick. I think that's the starting point for Kyle Davidson here, but he obviously knows Jones wants out, so he's going to have to take what's best at him. But coming here at Dallas, like I said, he would be coming in at $4.75 million, so they would have to move a little bit of cap around here, probably going back the other end in this trade for him to fit under the cap, but it's very easily done here for the Dallas Stars, and I think this team is a team that is going all in this year. We've seen them make a big trade already this year, and I think this is the year that Dallas kind of says, hey, let's just throw more gas on the fire and see if it helps us get to where we want to be, and that's Stanley Cup champions. And if we just take a look at their defense right now, obviously Heiskanen is out. He's a left shot defenseman. So you look at this right side. We got Lyubushkin, solid defensive defenseman back there for this team all year. But after that, you have Cody Ceci, who they got in that Granlund trade as well, which was, I enjoyed that acquisition from them as well. But you see, you have Matt Dumba as well. I think if you trade Seth Jones here, I think you get one of these guys back in return. I think you'd get a Dumba or a CC or a Lyubushkin. I'd say Lyubushkin may be the odd man out here if this trade does go through. Sorry, that's the Newfoundland coming out in me there. But I think that this Seth Jones fits this right side better than any of these defensemen that are already on this right side. I think Seth Jones is obviously a good point getter. We see him have so many, he was like 26 points so far this season in just 38 games. So, I mean, he's almost there to a point per game player. He got a ways to go, but, I mean, he could get there on a solid team. And I think bringing him in here, maybe shipping out a top-end prospect that Dallas does have plenty of down in their farm system, I think they make this work. And I think this, if Dallas looks here and says, hey, we want to go for it. We want to go all in. Let's get Seth Jones. He's available. It's going to cost us a bit more. It's a guy that we can keep here now for the next 5 years, and it's something that we don't need to worry about re-signing him and stuff like this. So I think that I like that trade a lot, and I'd love to see Seth Jones in Dallas. I think he would link up very well with Thomas Harley here on this second pairing, or you could even try to test him out with Heiskanen, and I think they would be a great pairing as well. But I'd love to see this. Want to hear your guys' thoughts on Seth Jones potentially going to Dallas. There was another team that I did like here when I was going through the salary cap and who would actually have enough room to bring him in. And that's the Los Angeles Kings. I think the Los Angeles Kings aren't getting a lot of love this season. I think they're having a very tremendous season. They're third in their division right now, looking like they're going to make the playoffs if they can continue their success down the second half of the season. And when you look at the Los Angeles Kings, I think Seth Jones fits in their lineup perfectly. If we just take a look at the right side, obviously they just got Drew Doughty back, which is a big piece for them to have now going into the second half of the season. But one thing LA has a lot of is good forwards. They have a lot of good scoring options up there. They obviously have Brandt Clark, who is a tremendous young defenseman on that right side. But I do think if they're looking for it, they could go out and make this, I believe, I'll just bring it back up here. They do have $4.5 million in deadline cap here, so they don't need to move a whole lot to make this trade work. They do have their first round pick for this season, so maybe they say, hey, let's go all in. It's Drew Doughty's, coming towards the end of his career now. I mean, what is he? He's like 35 at this point, so he's going to want to try to win another one before he hangs him up, and he's looking very good in the Four Nations faceoff. But back to Seth Jones, I think getting him in on this right side would do wonders for this team. If you put him in replace of Spence here, maybe even drop Clark back down to the third pairing, I think having a pairing of Edmondson and Seth Jones would be a very, very sneaky good defensive pairing for this team. And Seth Jones, obviously, he's a guy who can go out there, he can make a play happen, he can make a scoring chance happen out of nothing. And Joel Edmondson, we've seen this guy be such a terrifying defensive defenseman. So I'd really like this pairing for them. And if they say, hey, let's go out, let's try to win it, we want to get one while Drew is still healthy and while we can get him in the lineup, and, you know, they're only giving up a first-round pick or something like that, I think that this would work out for the LA Kings, and I really would like to see him in LA. I think that's a very, like, a good trade destination for him, one that maybe a lot of people didn't think of. More people went to, like, the New York and the Floridas and the guys that are in the top of the league right now. I mean, New York's still battling in the wild card. They're trying to get into the playoffs, so maybe a guy like Seth Jones could be good for them. But if we just take a look at the standings here and some teams that we could potentially see involved in these talks, in the East, I think Florida is going to be in on these talks. Their defense is very solid, but if they do want to, you know, have a guy for the long term, because Seth Jones is 30 years old, and you have 5 years left in his contract. That is 5 years of a right-hand defenseman that you don't need to worry about. And I think that's what's going to draw a lot of interest from teams here in a trade like this. I think Toronto doesn't really have the cap to make this work. They obviously have to do something with Marner here. I think it could be an interesting destination for him. I would love to see him go to Toronto, but I don't think that is feasible for Toronto. I think New Jersey is an interesting one. I really would like to see him go there. I think New Jersey is one of those teams that is still very underrated among NHL fans, and I think bringing in a two-way guy in Seth Jones could really bring them to the next level as well. But switching sides to the West, Winnipeg, I would love to see him in Winnipeg, but Winnipeg got so many expiring guys, and they don't know what they're doing there. They got to sign Ehlers, they got to sign so many people that maybe bringing in Seth Jones could help them, because then they don't need to sign him for another 5 years. But then there's $4.75 million gone, and you got to use that towards the guys you're going to sign. So I don't see that's very feasible for them either. Dallas, obviously, we talked about. Edmonton, Vegas, I think the cap is too tight for those teams to bring him in, but Vegas always finds a way, so never count them out. I think he would work there as well. Minnesota's a team that I thought of instantly, but the cap situation doesn't really look like it works, and I think that they'd be more going after a forward than a defenseman here in free agency. But there's a lot of teams going to be in on Seth Jones here. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Where do you think he ends up? What are you giving up for him on 50% retained? Do you give up a first-round pick for a guy like Seth Jones? Let me know down below in the comment section. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. If you enjoyed this one, make sure down below leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. We're on the road for 12,000 subscribers. I appreciate seeing all your guys' support here. And if you're not subscribed and you love hockey, make sure down below, join the best community on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. But as always, I've been your host, Casey. Keep your stick on the ice.